Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about Final Destination Bloodlines, the movie that came out in 2025. And I gotta say, this movie was freaking awesome, man. Like, I really enjoyed this movie because, I've said this before when I review like slasher movies and especially the Final Destination movies, is that, well, actually, I haven't even reviewed the Final Destination movies yet. They're going to be coming out in the following like days and weeks. But like I've already reviewed, I think the first Final Destination movie, I think last year. And like I said before, this was probably the first horror movie that I've actually watched. If it wasn't that, it was 13 Ghosts. But I watched this around the time I first watched Scream and everything. And I remember back in the day, I was like in college or whatever. And so I was at Target or a Blockbuster one, and I saw Final Destination. I was getting into horror because of like Scream, and I bought this movie. I was just like curious and stuff. Like, what the heck is this going to be about? I had no idea. Never seen a trailer. I watched it and I loved it. The special effects were so realistic and stuff. And I've been watching these movies ever since. However, I have not been happy with this franchise ever since. The first movie is my all-time favorite. But then, like, the third one is actually my second favorite. And everything else is just like whatever. You know what I'm saying? And because I have problems with the second one. I hate the fourth one. And the fifth one is just so freaking boring. And I do like the opening kills for like all the movies except for the fourth one. And so now I have I can add a third one to my favorite. I still don't know my ranking. I still think number one is the best. It's a toss between this one and the third one. I just don't know who's coming in second and everything. Because the second one has some really good kills. And it wasn't overdone with like CGI. However, the story of the third one is kind of a little wonky at times, and I wish it could have been stronger, but I do like the elements in which they how they created the third and stuff, the whole clues of death design, the slow motion and stuff like that. But yeah, I like the whole you're following death as it's about to get somebody, does that whole slow motion thing that's like creepy and eerie. I love the deaths. Like that tanning bed scene was just awesome. The cast was pretty good. My only problem is they didn't have Bloodworth, and that there really wasn't nobody to guide them on their course, to give them guidance and stuff like all the other movies. They just like, oh, hey, remember this plane crash from so long ago and blah, blah, and, stuff like that. Also, I did like the whole camera picture thing, it was something new and fresh at that time. However, now it's the only one that kind of stands out other than like the second one in terms of like the clues. But I do like the story of Bloodlines a heck of a lot better because, you're dealing with like a family, a generation of like a family, and they really kind of flipped the script with this movie where they changed things around. And if they would have done that in the past, it would have been horrible. Because they changed the whole opening death scene. Normally, after you have an opening death scene, you have the person realize, oh crap, what did I just see? I saw everybody die. So then they go and they try to save everybody, and a couple of people are saved, and then you follow the story with the survivors. Here it's a little different and everything. Here you get the premonition, but then you don't really know what happens after that. And then you finally do get the part where the person saves people, but later on and everything in the movie. But then you don't follow the survivors of the opening kill and everything. Now it's completely different. And so because it's been so many years since the fifth movie, it's refreshing and it's a nice little twist. If that would have happened a long time ago when all these movies were coming out within a couple of years ago, I think people would have been irritated, but it's a nice take on it. Now, I do not want them to do that again. I want them to go back to tradition, but you know, it was a nice like change of pace. But it's just the kills I don't like in this movie. They happen way too quickly and they're overly CGI. It reminded me a little bit of the fourth movie. Now, as we all know, Jeff Reddick was the one who created this whole movie back in the day. And so the movie did get delayed by the SAG strikes. Now, it had a budget of $50 million, but it made $205.3 million at the box office. That is impressive for one, a horror movie, and two, this franchise. And people keep trying to say, see, I know what you did last summer, just made $50 million. Who cares? So this movie was directed by two men, Adam Stein and Zach Lipovsky. And the interesting thing about that is that Zach is from Goosebumps from back in the 90s. That is insane. Like he was in Vampire Breath. I think Teddy he played or something like that. And I totally remember that episode. It's one of my favorites. It's just like a kooky episode. And so, like, what's really interesting about that, even more, is that there are more ties to R.L. Stein's work. So you have Zach from the 90s Goosebumps. But, like, you also have that of Ted Bernares, who was his sister was actually in the 2023 Goosebumps series on Disney Plus. Also, Ted is from the Chucky television show. And so also you have Gabrielle Rose, who plays the older Iris, and she is from the Haunting Hour, episode called Really You. And it's where a doll comes to life and tries to take over this one girl's life. Then you have Richard Harmon, who plays Eric, and he's from the Haunting Hour. And he was in Nightmare Inn, where he plays a werewolf bad boy and everything. But the ties go even crazier than that. There are ties to the Arrowverse. Because you have Brett Bassinger, who was Stargirl of all people, and she had her own show. One of my favorites, man. I missed that show. And so many other people was in the Arrowverse. Anna Lore, who plays Julie, she was in Gotham Knights. Then Richard was also in the Arrowverse, and Tony Todd was the voice of like Salvador or something like that, or Zoom. I can't remember which one it was. And there's a couple of other people here who's been in like the Arrowverse, like April Telek and stuff like that. And a couple of other like of these stars. So there's like this weird connection of R.L. Stein and the CW's Arrowverse. So when I really came to this movie, I didn't know what to expect. I was hoping it was going to be good because the last two entries just didn't do it for me. And I was very, very, very like curious to know how they're going to tie this whole family thing to it. Is everybody going to be related to like all the other movies? Is it just going to be this one family? Like, what's it going to be? You know what I'm saying? I think they did a pretty good job doing that. Although it does get a little confusing. Like death's order and everything in the family lineage. The order in which everybody dies is very confusing. And it doesn't make too much sense. The CGI, that could have been a heck of a lot better. The CGI, while not as horrible as like Final Destination 4, because they went 3D with that, the CGI just kind of feels like it was on a TV budget. And that's because it kind of was. Originally, this was supposed to stream on HBO Max. But David Zaslav finally had a good idea and was all like, yo, let's put this in the theaters. I wish he would have done that to Batgirl. I'm never going to get over that. And so that's kind of why the CGI is kind of wonky, because everybody just kind of get crushed with stuff. And they get crushed very quickly. And so, like, the CGI could have been a heck of a lot better. And I mean a heck of a lot better. This movie also explains who, like, William Bloodworth is. We finally, after all these decades, got, like, an explanation and everything. Although I do think the reason why they wrote this for him is because, sadly, the actor was battling cancer, and it was heartbreaking seeing him do these scenes because he could barely like get his words out. You can tell he was in pain, and it feels so bad seeing that man like this, because he is such a great actor who sadly passed away. May he rest in peace. But I'm okay with this backstory. I kind of wanted them to leave it like up in the air as to have fans guess who he is, but whatever. Um, Technically, within the movie chronological order, Iris is technically the first to ever have a premonition that we know of. I'm still hoping that when they make more movies, they go back further into the past. And like before technology got like really advanced, and see how that would happen. Like a movie in the Wild West setting would be very interesting. Victorian era, maybe, I don't know. Pilgrim Days would be kind of fascinating, but it would be a little bit of a stretch because it's kind of like, what can you really do to kill people? Having two characters die of cancer was just kind of odd in this movie. It's like, if death is really gonna do that, then why not just do that to everybody? You know what I'm saying? Now, there were some CGI scenes and practical scenes that were like amazing. I really like those. Um, as for a twist, there is a twist. It's not really too much a big twist. It does kind of affect the story, but not really. You know what I'm saying? Um, I still find this fascinating and refreshing that this is the first movie where we have like a giant like accident and we don't follow all the survivors and everything. They could always do spin-offs of that, but then, would anybody really be interested in something like that? This movie does kind of harken back to the first Final Destination movie, where it's kind of like William Bloodsworth is kind of like the only real black character that's kind of like important and part of the cast, because the first movie did that and the movie was completely white. This movie does have two other black stars, but they don't have like really that big of a role. So he's still kind of like the only real black star in like the movie. And for the most part, the movie is predominantly white. However, they did something very fascinating, and I'm so happy they did this, because this is something I've been wanting for the longest time. They finally give us Asian characters that actually do something. The third movie is technically the first time we've ever had an Asian character, but they really didn't do much or say much. Then in the fifth movie, we had the ladies at the spa, and they was just there to be there at the spa. That dude was being rude to them. They was kind of being rude to him back. And so we really never had like a main Asian character. And for the first time, not only do we have Asian characters, but one of them is like the main lead, the one who has the premonitions. And that's something I've always wanted, because in every other Final Destination movie, only white people have the premonitions, and there was never a person of color. And so after all these years, they finally corrected that error and everything. So I'm really happy to see that. And both of the Asian characters are like a Filipino descent. And so I've always wondered, okay, are they the Asian Filipino or are they the Latino Filipino? So far, it seems to be they're the Asian Filipino. The guy who plays their father is not Filipino. I think he's Chinese, I think. So Hollywood is still doing that where they'll just cast an Asian person just to go along with his family. However, my one gripe about having these Asian characters is I don't like how they're whitewashed. And no, I'm not talking about the mother being white. Oh, by the way, the mother, um trying to think of her name. Oh, it's something. Raya, I think. Yeah, she was in Superman and Lois season 2 as the bad person. Anyway, I ain't talking about whitewashing as in their mother being white. I'm talking about having them just basically be Asian people who are basically just white characters and stuff. And what I mean by that is like, other than their skin color and their facial features, nothing really screams Asian about these two characters. I find it very extremely odd that like when you go to their house, you don't see not one heritage artifact from like, their culture and everything. You see no type of statue that like, Asian representation, no lettering, no clothing, no music, like no nothing whatsoever. And that's just really odd. I know some Asian people, when they do marry white folks, they kind of get assimilated into their culture, but you still see part of their culture in their home. And I was very baffled not to see not one thing that represents their heritage and stuff. Like in Idle Hands, Jessica Alba's character is, no, of course she's Mexican, you know what I'm saying? But in her home, you saw that one Latino artifact in her home. But here you don't see absolutely nothing. Now, Asian people dress all kind of different ways. But if I was going to dress them, I would have them look more like a K-pop singer or a J-pop singer, something like that, but not too extreme. Because here, they're basically just dressed like white people, especially the brother. They got him doing the whole grunge skater boy look and everything. That totally screams white boy right there. And I'm just kind of, and they even gave them two white names. You would think, since the father, he's like you would assume he would have been like, hey, let's give them like an Asian name or something like that. But no, it's just they wanted to play it safe. They wanted to roll back on DEI at some type of way. And we basically got two Asian white type washed like characters and everything. Wow, like I said before, I'm extremely happy we finally got some type of Asian representation in this franchise. They still found a way to make them white. In terms of acting, it was fine. Except for three people. The actor who plays Bobby, who doesn't have many acting credits. The actor who plays Charlie. Like in the Chucky show, he was fine, but I don't know, maybe he's more of a TV actor than a movie actor because his acting was off in this movie. And then there's the lead actress herself, who plays Stephanie. It's like her acting was fine. The only problem was, it's like, she overdid it with like her eye reactions. It's just like, I don't know, her eye reactions were like off in the movie like the entire time, and it was just like very distracting. Like the actress from the second movie, her acting was atrocious, and if she ever returns back, I hope her acting got better. And so the movie starts off with this couple played by Brett Bassinger, and she plays Iris. And her boyfriend are going to this fancy smancy, like, outing at like this Sky Needle type thing. And the setting is 1968. And so like, he's gonna propose to her. But the thing is, he doesn't have a reservation, so they sneak in anyway. And so, like, turns out she's pregnant. And this one singer, a backup singer, she's the one who discovers that Iris is pregnant and stuff. And so she's giving her like advice here and there, and we see her little son playing with the truck. And I had a feeling, oh, that has to be William right there. But she calls, wait, actually, she don't say his name, I don't think. And so while they're there, there's this little bratty boy who's just, he works there, he's rude to everybody, he cusses folks out, and he has a penny. This Penny is the craziest character in the entire movie because this penny causes so many deaths. He throws it over and it gets stuck in like the ventilation system and the air duct system, and it starts causing problems and everything. It's overheating stuff. Um, Not only that, but the people are stomping their feet as they're dancing, and for some bizarre reason, the floor is made of glass. Now, while all this is going, there's a singer, and he's singing the song Shout. Now, I love this song so much. It was sung by the Isley Brothers back in 1959. That's a long time. And there was three Isley brothers, and only one of them, the lead singer Ronald, is still alive. He originally stopped singing because his brothers had died, but I think he decided to get back in there. The first time I've ever seen him sing, I was back in college. It was late at night. I was flipping through like VH1 or MTV back when they still played music, and R. Kelly came on. And this was back when R. Kelly wasn't, well, people didn't know he was a horrible person. And so I got to see Ronald Isley like sing. I'm like, oh, this is a catchy song and everything. Now this song has different meanings because of who R. Kelly is. And so, like the Shout song, now I've heard this before, but I've never heard it in its entirety. I've only heard it in the Shout commercials, like the spray that gets stains out and everything. And I think I heard it sung by somebody else. I've never heard the original. It's on YouTube. It's an amazing 4-minute song. The only bad part is that they cut away to a bunch of like, clips of people like soldiers and everything with their loved ones. That's cool, but because it was back in the 50s and 60s, it's nothing but white people. And then there's one disturbing thing that I can't stand to see. It's a white man doing blackface. And yes, that's in the music video still to this day. But yeah, the song is on YouTube, and it's crazy because it's like, so many people comment Final Destination Bloodlines brought me here and everything, and they're all like, I can't stop listening to this song. And it's a great song, and the origin of that song is really interesting because like the song is in the Grammy Hall of Fame and it's been there since 1999. And lose my voice. And so normally the Isley Brothers would like end their song covering a Jackie Wilson song. But then Ronald, he, for whatever reason, he decided to like break habit and talk to the audience and be all like, you make me wanna. And then they said shout, and then they all started singing. And that's kind of how the thing, happened. It's a nice little rock and roll / pop type song. And in case people might not know this, yes, Black people did invent rock and roll because it originated with like gospel music and church, people having like the Holy Ghost and everything, stomping their feet, shouting, hollering, throwing their hands up in the air, having a good time. And that's how rock and roll music started. It originated with Black people in Black churches and stuff. Then, like everything else, white people stole it. And they just kept on with it. And so it's weird when you see a Black person singing rock and roll, because you always get that one white person saying, like Fifi Dobson. If you don't know who she is, she's a rock and roll singer. She's half Black, half white. I think she's Canadian or something like that. She was very popular when she was a teenager. She still makes music now that she's older. And somebody in the comment section said like, it's cool to see like a black person, step away from their genre of music of rap and R&B and try something different like rock and roll, only for people in the comment section to school this person and correct this person and let them know, hey, we originated this music, but y'all stole it. And you stole our dance moves and everything. Looking at you, Elvis. So Iris has the premonition, she's freaking out, and then boom, the glass like shatters and everything. There's explosions everywhere. People getting set on fire. This one woman, I believe her. Actually, I don't even remember her name. She's like now I remember Yvette Ferguson, I believe her name is. She's 71 years old and she's mostly a stunt woman. She's done some acting, but she's mostly a stunt woman. She came out of retirement at 71 years old just to get set on fire for this movie. Now that's a trooper right there. So people are like falling over, like, like the top of like the roof, and the little boy who threw the penny, thankfully he died and everything. And so the only two people left alive are like little William and Iris. And it's funny because it's like the only thing, like she's holding on kind of like Spider-Man style. The only thing holding her there is that her ring, the engagement ring, is stuck between like something. And then it's a gross scene where her finger gets like ripped off and then she falls and her face goes splat in like a spike. Then Stephanie wakes up, and Stephanie is played by Caitlin Santa Joanna. And so like she is the granddaughter of Iris. Why exactly is she having dreams of what happened to her grandmother all those years ago? Nobody knows. It's never really explained. Somehow she just got gifted the gift of premonition, but somehow it's tied to that of her grandmother's premonition. And with the opening scene, like every Final Destination movie has that big opening scene where it makes you terrified to do whatever people were doing before they were like, killed. Plane, bridge, logs on a truck, like, stuff like that. And I'm thinking to myself, how often do people be on a sky needle? Like, you know what I'm saying? But hey, whatever. So she's having these premonitions. She's kind of freaking out. She doesn't understand why. She has no idea who this blonde girl is. She goes home from college and she's meeting up with her family. And it turns out that her mom abandoned them about 10 years ago and stuff like that. And she goes over to like her cousin's place and, and all of a sudden when she's talking to like her uncle and stuff, she realizes that, it's the grandmother she's been dreaming about. And, she asks like, where's grandmother? And he's all like, we don't talk to her. That's why your mom left. She drove us crazy and your grandmother's crazy. Don't talk to her. She wrote a bunch of letters, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? But she's determined to find this woman because she wants to know, why did she have this very elaborate dream? So she goes roaming through the house and she finds the letters with the address and she goes out to the house. And the house is like a cabin in the woods and it's pretty like armored up and everything. Like all the trees surrounding the house are cut down. There's barbed wire everywhere. There are spikes. There's all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And all I could think about is this cabin in the woods. How is it supposed to keep somebody safe? Because if you ever watch the other movies, death is going to come for you and it's going to come for whatever around you. So when we saw Alex in the cabin in the woods in the first movie, he taped down a bunch of stuff, but stuff was still getting loose and came after him. All it would take is for like a windstorm to come around, knock one of those spike poles off and bust through the house or something like that, or something like, because a roof will get damaged over time with a bunch of storms and everything. So that barbed wire and everything else can come crashing down. But, it's like, I don't understand how this is supposed to keep somebody safe. Now, it keeps people out. So that's the good thing. And so she has cameras everywhere and this and that, right? And so older Iris is played by Gabrielle Rose. And It's cool to see her in here. I remember her from The Haunting Hour, and she is extremely paranoid. She knows death is coming for her, and she doesn't want that to happen. She's evaded death for so many years, but it's coming to her in the form of cancer. And so she has a book because she's been jotting down everything that's been happening with all these strange occurrences. The plane crash from the first movie, the second movie, third, so on, so on. The roller coaster from the third movie, like, the race car thing from the fourth, and of course the bridge collapse from like the fifth. And so she's been trying to figure out all these patterns and all this and that and all these weird occurrences and all the people that's like affected by death and this and that. We finally now get to see the scene where she rescues everybody. And basically after the premonition, like, it was so cute seeing Brett, like, prance around like the kitchen or the dining area, putting the fires out and making everybody safe, and everybody, but she saved like over 100 people. And she said death in this new design is coming after all the people, then their descendants and everything. She said that at first, she didn't think nothing of it, but then all of a sudden, everybody from who got rescued from that Sky Needle started to die one by one. And so she realized that there was some type of pattern. Then it killed her fiance. Realizing that only her and William are the only two people left alive, this is when she started becoming very paranoid and started freaking her kids out and all this other stuff, right? And so apparently the pattern in death is that it will come for each person that, like, died in their order. Then it will come for their descendants, and then it will go to the next person on the list and then kill their descendants, and then the next person on the list and kill their descendants and everything. And so it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of odd because, but these people were never supposed to be born in the first place. So death is just cleaning up its mistakes. And so, like, she says that, once she's gone, then like, it will be her uncle, then her mom, and then it's gonna go to all the grandkids, and then it's gonna go to, I guess, like William or something like that. And so her granddaughter does not believe her, and for very good reasons. So she proves to it by stepping outside for the first time in 20 years, she said. And then death didn't wait for cancer, it just squished her. This made the granddaughter realize that, hey, what she's saying is true. She runs back home to tell her family, but nobody believes her and stuff. They all think she's crazy and everything. And so, like, as the family's having like a barbecue and everything, what's her name? Stephanie is like home trying to decipher the book and everything, and sees a name called JB, but she don't know who that is. And so, like, this is the cool trailer scene that we got with the family and the ice and the ice cubes, and it makes you scared now to drink ice. I've been scared of fountain drinks from like fast food places for years. Why? Because one time on the news, instead of putting sugar or something like that in like the drink machine, somebody put like some other kind of powdery stuff, and it was like some type of acid, and somebody drank it and it burnt through their throat. I've been terrified of that ever since, but I still get fountain drinks every once in a while. Oh, no way, it wasn't sugar. They're supposed to clean it out. And they're supposed to clean it. I think they were supposed to clean it with something, and that's when they put the lye acid type stuff, and yeah, it burnt through somebody's throat or something like that. And so, yeah, you get this like elaborate scene where death is coming for them with the ice cubes, and there's some fake out deaths. And it's like, oh man, I thought she was really choking on it. And then it's like, the trampoline and like, the rake thing and the lawnmower. And you think, okay, gonna give, but like, wow, another fake out. But as Stephanie's rushing to the house, it happened. The uncle got his face ripped to shreds by the lawnmower. And I'm all like, finally. Like I remember when I was younger, I came up with my own slasher novel type thing, and I'm all like, I've never seen nobody get killed with a lawnmower. So I wrote somebody got killed with a lawnmower. Then a couple of years later, Scream Queens did that with a lawnmower. I'm like, awesome. And now this movie did. So now, for the most part, her brother is starting to believe her and everything. However, the mom is now back in the picture. After the grandmother died and everything, the mom finally decided to come back. And it's a little tense because Stephanie doesn't want nothing to do with her mom because, the mom abandoned her and stuff. So the only person she has on her side is her brother, what did I say the brother's name? Charlie and everything. And so they're going to the cousin's house to warn them, but Eric still doesn't believe it. Now, Eric had his own encounter with death. He's the one from the trailer in the tattoo parlor shop. He upset that his dad died. He's the prick of the movie. Every movie has like a prick, but he also has a nice side to him. And this is this big elaborate scene where his ring nose gets stuck on like a chain, and he's dangling from like the fan, the ceiling fan. And I'm all like, oh my God, this is going to be the cool death I've ever seen in this movie. So like, I'm waiting for it. He falls, the floor catches on fire. Then it pans outside. I'm like, what happened? But he's alive. And so this made fans speculate that it's not his time and that he, can cheat death and everything. Because how the movies is like, if it's not your time, no matter how many times you try to offer yourself, it's just not going to work. And somebody has to intervene and save you. Now, in this movie, there is no intervention where people are saving people and stuff like that. And it's very frustrating because it makes it very confusing now. Because you're kind of like, okay, well, if it skipped this person, then it must go to the next person. But it's kind of like, wait, hold up. What if it doesn't finish off the family? Then is it going to get William or not? You know what I'm saying? But Eric's being a jerk and he doesn't want to listen to what Stephanie has to say. He doesn't believe nothing. And she's having her premonitions. Now, her premonitions are weak because we never truly ever really get to see them. Because she just comes up in her head. She's all like, okay, well, I guess maybe the kids are playing with the ball. The ball hits like the chainsaw in the tree, and then it bounces off this and hits this, and then blah 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 blah, and somebody dies. Like, we never get to see it. She just tells us what's gonna happen. And so he doesn't believe it, and he's playing with the garbage truck. But then all of a sudden his sister, Julia, gets hit with like a soccer ball, and she falls in a trash can. And so like she falls in the garbage truck, and they have to get her out. And this is another thing that's always scared me, because I remember on the news they say, like, if you ever get stuck in a garbage truck, you only have a couple of seconds to get out of that thing, because it's almost impossible to get out, at least the older ones and stuff. And because when that thing starts to turn around, it's gonna fall on top of you and trap you there. And so this is something that's always like, scared me and everything. And so she's in there and they try to save her and she gets crushed, and it's gross. So now the entire family believes them and everything. And so like the family can't seem to understand how Eric didn't die and everything, because he was next in line and not Julia. And it turns out the mom confesses that she had an affair. Maybe she had an affair, or maybe she had him before she got with like their dad. But she made Eric by like another man. And it's a really hilarious scene when he finds out who his real father is. But next in line is Bobby. Now, Bobby doesn't get very much to do and stuff like that. And so like he has a peanut allergy, so he's terrified. They have to find a way to keep each other alive, and he's terrified. And so like the mom tells them, because Stephanie's all like, I don't know who this JB person is, but she keeps writing about him. And so the mom's all like, oh yeah, that must be that guy that works at like the hospital or something like that. So they tracked them down and they went there. Very rushed, very convenient, but whatever. I'm all like, JB, who the heck is that? Because I don't know nobody named JB in the franchise. And then it's none other than William Bloodsworth. But apparently his name is William John Bloodworth, but his middle name starts with a J, so they nicknamed him JB. I don't know why. They don't make no freaking sense. It would have made sense to call him WB because of William Bloodsworth, and plus the WB made this movie. But like he explains how he knows Iris. He was there playing with his truck and the sky needle like collapsed and she saved she had a premonition and then she saved everybody. And so like they've kept in touch ever since, but about 20 years ago when they started realizing people was dying, then that's when they became buds and he helped her fortify her cabin in the woods. Why he didn't live there, it doesn't make no sense. Like I said before, they probably came up with this whole backstory for him, a softer backstory, because sadly the man was dying of cancer as he was doing like his performance. You can see it looked like he struggled to like even get his words out. It's so heartbreaking to hear his voice like this because he doesn't sound the way he normally does. And such a phenomenal actor. You don't hear nothing bad about this man. Like nothing like all these other celebrities who do bad things. Like you don't hear nothing bad about this dude. And so cancer was coming for his character as well, just like with Iris. And he said once y'all are all dead and I'm next on the list. And it's not mentioned if he has any kids or anything like that. Now, if they do more movies, they're gonna say, oh yeah, he has a kid. But then they're gonna have to do the whole bloodline storyline again. So I hope they don't. And like, so he's been staying alive this entire time, but like I said before, it doesn't make no sense from like the other movies. Like here, he's nice, he's soft-spoken, he's smiling, but in a nice kind of way. He's not that same character we've seen him before. In all the other movies, he always had this mysteriousness to him. He always had this sinister grin to him. He always had this whole thing where he knew who everybody was before they ever said their name. He's always had this creepy, evil factor to him, which made people speculate if he could be death itself and coming for everybody. But I never speculated if he was deaf because of the simple fact. If he's deaf and he said you don't want to mess with that Matt Daddy because he'll come back and get you, and if you mess with his design, he'll really come with you. And so why would he always warn all the survivors about Death's design and how to cheat Death and everything? Like in every movie, he's teaching people how to cheat Death. So why would he do that if he's deaf himself? So I never speculated that, but I always speculated he could have been like an angel who was just kind of creepy, sinister, only because he played the Candyman back in like the 80s and stuff. And so, like, he explains it to everybody. He said, cherish your loved ones while you have time because death will come for you and everything. And so may he rest in peace. So now that they know the rule, because also William mentioned the two survivors of the second movie, making fans speculate they could still be alive and didn't die in the wood chipper like in the third movie's DVD. So Bobby and Eric are trying to find a way to keep Bobby alive, and especially Eric because he loves his brother. So he's all like, hey man, William said that, if you die and then you come back alive, then that's it. Like you cheated death and nobody else has to die. And, or you can take somebody's life. And he's all like, I can't take nobody's life. But he's all like, but if you take their life, you get the rest of their life. And then they turn into a bunch of babies. Oh my God. And Bobby actually contemplated taking a baby's life because he would have a full life after that, unless the baby's gonna die of natural causes as a baby. But then they all like, yo, you got that peanut allergy, we'll let that stop your heart. Then since we're in a hospital, they can just resuscitate you and everything. So they get him some peanuts, he eats them and everything. But there's a problem. Eric messed around with Def's design, and you don't mess with that Mac Daddy. So Def came for Eric with the MRI machine. And so since it's a super huge, powerful magnet, it started bringing things towards like the machine. The nurse is so nonchalant. She's just kind of like, oh, stuff flying around. Let me go slowly walk there. And so Eric gets completely crushed by the machine. And you think Bobby's gonna die at that point because of the peanuts, but he gets his little needle thing and stabs himself with it to like save his life from the peanut allergy. But Eric is completely crushed. But then all of a sudden, Bobby gets his in the forehead with the coil from like the vending machine. So now with only 3 people left alive, Stephanie, her brother and mother, they head back to the cabin because it's the only thing that can keep them alive and everything. They have to keep the mother alive so they can live. But of course, death comes for them. And so they get into like a car accident and the car goes underwater and Stephanie having a hard time getting out. The mom gets hit with like an explosion. And so like I'm all like, hold up. This reminds me of the first movie. Alex saved Claire and the explosion threw Alex away, so it skipped him, but nobody intervened. So I'm all like, okay, are these rules in play too? Because the mom got thrown and she's still alive. So technically, didn't it skipped her? But no, because nobody intervened. But death came and squished her. And then the brother saved like the sister. But she took in too much water and he had to give her CPR. So they assume that they're safe because they assume that the sister died and he resuscitated her heart and brought her back alive. But in comes the penny. Oh, that penny. So it causes an accident. And so while the brothers getting ready for prom and everything, here comes death. And it's another log on a truck. Similar to the second movie, but not as cool. So for some bizarre reason, these 2 idiots decide to run and in a straight line and not going left or right to avoid the log truck. So the sister gets squished. So oh wait, the girl with the premonition got squished. So that sucks for Charlie, but then Charlie gets squished by a log. And the reason why death still came after them is because when they was talking to this one doctor guy and she's all she drowned and she died and came back to life, he's all like, no, you didn't necessarily die. You was just unconscious and everything. And so you was very much alive, but your brother just got the water out your lungs and everything. So this causes them to freak out, and of course they got squished and stuff like that. Oh, that penny. So I wish the death scenes could have been better. There's only really 2 really good death scenes in the whole movie. Everything else is just a CGI fest when it comes to the killings. People dying in Sky Needle, I just don't really see that happen. I mean, yeah, it could happen, but that's not something people fear. They fear planes, they fear trains, they fear cars, bridges, stuff like that. I really hope there's gonna be a train scene in the next movie or a boat, and then they could really go back in time and do the whole boat thing and the train thing because they had those things back in those days. I wish they could have kept William's character a bit more mysterious, but I get it. This was his swan song and everything. This is his last outing, so they decided to give him a nice, friendly little goodbye. And so, that was nice and everything. The rules of death design is very confusing. Very, very confusing. Because it's kind of so wait, hold up. So death waited for these people all these years, taking people out one by one until it got to the very last, like, child and everything, or descendant. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, so did it pause death for all of them? But what about the people in the other movies? So that makes you think death is working overtime because there are other, like, people who broke the pattern. So it gets confusing because it's kind of like, okay, does it stop for everybody in the entire franchise until they kill Iris? Because if so, nobody else should die. So I just think, if a natural disaster happens like multiple times, and it's kind of like, okay, death will do its overtime and get people in different ways, and and stuff like that. But all in all, I really enjoyed it. Now, the book with all the information, I wish they could have shown more of that. That would have been nice. But, it's nice what we got. So, all in all, I am very thrilled with this movie. And I'm so glad I love it. I can't wait to buy it on home media and everything. That wasn't that spooky. All right. Well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.